How many people can say that their relationship is a search term on Pornhub? 40, 50 years ago, our relationship would have been a crime. My name is Jamaine Krige.
And my name is Kofi Zwana.
Our story starts, as all great love stories do, in a dive bar in Melville.
A mutual friend of ours had a birthday happening there.
He came over to hit on the girl that was standing with me.
Yeah. I saw a pretty woman there, and I figured, hey, let me go chat, see what the vibe is. The vibe was not a match, but Jamaine was sitting with her, and her and I immediately kind of clicked. But I guess the clicker of the evening was that a few hours later, I realized I didn't have my phone anymore. And I asked guys, can you please check bag? And Jamaine offered to call it for me. And that's how Jamaine got my number.
He actually messaged and said, listen, I would like to take you out on a real date. And I was like, oh, those were some misplaced friends. But we arrived and we started talking and talking and talking. Spoke about work and spoke about travel. I think it was interesting for the people around us because people were listening in. Melville is a small, dodgy little hole. I love it. People were listening in and said, okay, so where did you grow up? And he's like, yeah, I'm from Zimbabwe when I grew up in Bulawayo. And so people were like, how's this going to go down? And I was like, okay, that's fine. And he's like, so where I'm from in Bulawayo. And the people were like, yes. And then he was, there's this thing about mermaids, right? And aliens. People were really rooting for, and then they were just like, oh no.
They're like, buddy, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
But then what was really great is that Jamaine also has a passion for mermaids and for weird conversation.
And he was like, my gosh, there are stories about mermaids in Zim as well. And also the goblins. And also the aliens. And you could see people were just like, oh, okay, never mind. They're the same kind of weird. And it was amazing. And at the end of the date, which I thought went very well, went up on my tippy toes to say goodbye. And he proceeded to kiss my cheek, spin on his heels and walk away.
I can be clueless when it comes to that.
You're
you know
very
that.
Clueless. And here we are, almost 5 years later.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for passion. People who are passionate about what they do. The fact that he's kind of pretty helps as well. Not half bad. And smart. But passionate, so passionate. And that passion is contagious. It made me excited about things that I hadn't even thought about doing. And I think that's one of the things that works really well for us as well, is we are very different, but we do have kind of this common passion, this common thread that we share. And at the end of the day, I think that is storytelling, however we do it. I believe stories connect everything, and I definitely think that stories are what connect us.
When people see us, it comes with a lot of assumptions that have nothing to do with who we are as people. You still have to counter those assumptions on a day-to-day basis, that you have to kind of remind people we're defined by much more than just the fact that I'm black and she's white.
It's when we walk into a room, the first thing that people tend to notice is the fact we are interracial, that we are holding hands. And even that sometimes isn't enough. We'll be buying movie tickets and somebody like this. And it'll be like, okay, you'd like one ticket. I'm like, we'd like 2 tickets. They're like, oh, are you guys together?
No,
I picked him up in the parking lot. He looked hungry. I promised him some popcorn. What are we doing here? And I think there are still negative preconceptions. I think there's judgment, but there's also the flip side of that, tokenization of our relationship. And in the same way, when we're sitting having dinner, we have actually had people come up to us. We had somebody approach us and be like, sorry, I just walked over here. I just want to tell you guys what you guys are doing here is so beautiful. And they're like, what you guys are doing here is so beautiful and so brave. And we're like, God, is there something wrong with the kitchen at this place? Why is it brave? And we just want to tell you that what you guys are doing here just gives us hope for South Africa. and for the future of our country. I'm like, ma'am, we're just trying to eat our It's difficult as well, and it's uncomfortable being.
Yeah.
And in the same breath, being held up to be something more than just two people, sometimes making each other happy and sometimes making each other miserable.
And I mean, just to add on the point of fetishization, other things that happen is, so we'll be out together and a black man will come up to me and be like, you got a white girlfriend, can you get one for me too? As if she's like a commodity that I acquired, like it's a Pokemon that I got or something.
You know, we just don't see race, we don't see color.
We didn't know we were in an interracial relationship.
We were in an interracial relationship. We don't see color. We're like that kind of Cape Town vibe. But no, we are aware actually that we are in an interracial relationship.
Friends and family, there's been no pushback.
Even before we met each other, we have both curated a social group, friends, family around us, of people who think like we think, and who believe what we believe. And I think, you know, regardless of who I'm dating, things like racism don't fly in my social circles. I do have some more conservative family members who are racist. And I grew up hearing a lot of racist language. My parents are both journalists, they're both liberal, they're both very open. But in the extended family, it was Afrikaans. It was not just Afrikaans, but Afrikaner. And that was a problem for me my whole life because that wasn't something I associated or identified with. I then went to an Afrikaans high school, which was, again, very conservative, very racist. And I think one of the things that I have always been outspoken. So those family members, they would still talk that way, but they'd also know that I'd say, please don't talk that way. Don't use those words. That's not okay. I had a family member who, when her daughter came back from school with a black friend, sat her down and explained to her, you get crabs and you get lobsters and you get fish. And they all live together in the same ocean, but crabs play with crabs and lobsters play with lobsters and fish play with fish. And this isn't, you know, they don't mix. This is the same person who, with great fanfare, told me that told her daughters that if anybody ever brings home a black boyfriend, they're going to make him work in the garden. One of the things that helped immensely was that my grandfather loved Kofi before he passed. You met him quite early on as well.
Quite early on, yeah.
Because I think that was strategic as well. My grandfather is a patriarch of the family, and if he said this was okay, if he didn't bat an eyelid, then I knew everybody else would fall into line as well. But meeting new people, you never know what you're about to walk in on. We recently got new tenants in the house, and one of the very real conversations that we had was, what if they're not nice people? What if they have a problem with you being on the property? What if they have a problem with me? What if they're racist? There's always a consideration that, you know, this is something that we might need to prepare ourselves for. We might be walking into a situation that is hostile. The world we live in isn't always reflective of the world out there. But I think we're very aware of the fact that, you know, 40, 50 years ago, our relationship would have been a crime. We have come a really long way, but we still have a hell of a long way to go, not just as South Africans. Like the world, we see it everywhere at the moment. We've still got a hell of a long way to go.
So now I mostly speak Afrikaans. And if I'm encountering like new people, especially kind of in the area who are Afrikaans, like right off the bat, I'll speak to them in Afrikaans, almost to put them at ease as a like defensive measure, because I'm worried that they might be racist. But if I speak to them in Afrikaans, they might be like, oh, he's one of the good ones. That's a very, very real consideration that happens almost all the time.
The longer Kofi and I are together, the more we delved into And our experiences is realizing the everyday microaggressions, like the everyday things where people might have the best of intentions, white people might have the best of intentions, but there are certain ways that things are said, there are certain phrases, there are certain assumptions that even if it doesn't show outwards are hurtful. In South Africa, something that worries me a lot more is the issue of xenophobia. I was a journalist for very many years. I'm still a journalist. I covered a lot of the xenophobic protests. I covered a lot of the xenophobic unrest, a lot of the attacks, a lot of the violence. When we had our armed robbery here and Kofi and I were tied up on our kitchen floor, I just remember being terrified that he was going to speak and that the guys who were robbing us were going to hear that he doesn't speak like someone from here.
Trying to think of any instances in the other countries.
We get a lot of strange looks. We get a lot of strange questions, a lot of inappropriate questions and comments.
I think the most recent ones I can think of
was
Costa Rica. So there are a lot of questions that came up about Jamaine being Afrikaans, and some of them with the implication of, or the ones who had only read the most recent news were like, she's dating the ones who are oppressing.
Who are currently genociding my people. They didn't believe I'm from South Africa.
Yeah.
He's not even from South Africa. I think there are definitely comments about our sex lives. Apparently there are some rumors about black men. I can neither confirm nor deny. Those are conversations that come up. Those are things that people ask you.
It makes you feel very like othered, very fetishized.
How many people can say that their relationship is a popular search term on Pornhub?
Yeah.
One of the things that I notice is how insidious things are. It's those microaggressions that we were talking about. It's the kind of casual racism, the everyday racism, the systemic racism that comes through.
Uncomfortable experience where we did actually go over to the other side for a funeral.
After my grand passed,
we
went to Free State, to Paris.
Which is where a lot of the racist extended family are kind of, that area, kind of where they are. And here, Kirk type Christian, like in...
It was Parijs Bankster, but yes.
Oh, Parijs Bankster, yeah. But that kind of Christianity that says the Bible says that black people are trash. So therefore, so that deeply ingrained. I won't lie, it was quite terrifying because it was not on home turf. It was fiercely outnumbered. I was going to have to speak Afrikaans out my just to make sure everything was okay. In the church, it was really because I was there to honor the memory of this woman who had become part of my life, right? But at the same time, my eyes were also darting around to see what was going on.
Because there we got a lot of looks.
A lot of looks.
It's people who know people who know people who attend the church, who do the things, and everyone pulls together for a Reiki. That was uncomfortable as well. And there was a time when we had a conversation about whether you should come with or not.
Yeah, it was that serious.
I was thinking even after the robbery, Kofi and I had been held up and tied up here. And then we had our tenants who were tied up and held up in the main house with their 2 kids. And I was just wearing a t-shirt. Kofi was just wearing his underpants. When it was 2 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon.
On a hot day,
we were sitting on the stoop minding our own business when 5 armed guys came in through our front door. And when we'd been tied up, the moment we got untied, I said to Kofi, we need to go next door right now. And we need to just go check on the tenants. When telling the story to somebody else, one of the first things that they said to the tenants was, oh, it's probably Zimbabweans. Letitia, bless her heart, turned around and said, actually, yes, there was a Zimbabwean involved. He was tied up on the floor in the flat And the moment he got free, the first thing he did was to come and untie my family. And he then held my daughter on his lap while they both cried. So yes, there was a Zimbabwean involved in our armed robbery, and I thank God every day that he was there.
I love the fact that we're both creatives and we get to work together. She gets to be a partner with me on my films, and I get to work for her as a journalist sometimes.
Working with your life partner is something that, because usually there are very clearly defined roles, right? You are the director, you are the producer, you are this person, you do this, you do that, you do that. But the moment you bring our personal relationship and our romantic relationship, those lines do tend to get blurred. So I might overstep, where I might do things that a producer wouldn't normally do, or say things that a producer, and it all boils down to the kind of the finding the flow, finding the balance, finding the compromise. But I think for us, the stakes are also higher. When you've got projects that you're passionate about, when you've got jobs that you're doing together, the stakes are higher to resolve the things that are happening. And when you're working together and there are issues that arise in work, the stakes are also higher to resolve it. Because at the end of the day, Kofi always says, we know what we're working towards. It's not always easy, but I do feel that it has propelled both of us to kind of greater heights, and to broaden our horizons, and to explore things together that neither of us individually would necessarily have done.
Yeah. A year and a bit in, I started to look at Jamaine, and not just look, communicate that she's my end game. I'm here for life. I'm not a fan of marriage. And I said this from the get-go.
You did?
Yes. Life commitments, 100%. Marriage, not so much.
I don't really believe in marriage. I mean, I believe that it exists. It's not like a unicorn. I just don't believe in it as an institution for myself necessarily. I've never loved anybody enough to want to get the government involved to make sure they don't leave me. We're here because we want to be here. And that's a choice we make every day. And being married won't really change anything for us. If you have kids, it's a different story. But we're not planning on doing that either. So,
yeah.
Firstly, when dating someone from a different nationality, make sure it's a passport you actually want.
You say that.
I know.
But
when life goes to hell in a handbasket, we're going to Zimbabwe.
Yeah, exactly.
So like if when they finally cut off our water and our power, then at least we've got a backup, which is nice.
Leaning into those differences, whether it's race or country, opens up your world to so much more. Are there challenges? Yes. Are there new surprises and quirks? Absolutely. And I think that part is far more interesting.
We'd all love to think that we are exactly where we are because we're good people who earn to be where we, And sometimes you get into situations where you're forced to confront that the whole world doesn't operate in the same way that you've been operating. The world for you isn't the same as it is for everybody else. So be prepared to lean into that, but also don't lose your sense of humor. Because in a lot of the stories we tell, a lot of our experiences are actually quite horrific. We laugh about them, we giggle about them, but if we weren't going to laugh about them, we were going to cry about them. I would love to be inspiring outside of this context. I'd love to reach a point where we can inspire other people, but not just because we're in an interracial relationship and because we are the hope in the face of the new South Africa.